Hi, what an amazing Act One. Thank you, cast. Thank you for watching. Thank you, Renee. We are here now to do a Smash cast reunion. This is very exciting. This is the first time the cast of Smash has seen or talked to each other in a very long time. Just so you know, this is to fund the Actors Fund. All the money is going to a great cause. And without further ado, let's talk to the cast of Smash in this never before seen reunion. Hi, cast of Smash.
Hi.
Hello.
So is this the first time you guys have seen all of each other since season 2? Is that about right?
That's the only conditions we agreed to meet was remotely.
Other than the Bombshell concert, we got to, a lot of us reunited for the concert at the Minskoff Theater.
I don't think Jack was there.
Yeah, Andy and I were there.
I still can't sing. It's as true today as it was then.
I just wanted to ask you guys about sort of the origin of the series and when you first got the call and heard about it, and sort of, did you hear Spielberg was involved? Were you excited that it was going to, take place in the world of theater? Does anybody have any stories about sort of first getting the call about the show and being excited?
I have my story, and I'll try and tell it as brief as I can. This was a couple years before it actually went to NBC, but Bob Greenblatt was the head at Showtime, and my manager had called me and said, hey, it's not happening yet, but I just want to give you a heads up. There's this show that Bob Greenblatt and Steven Spielberg are getting produced or creating, developing, and I know you're perfect for one of the parts. And so then cut to like 2 years later, I actually got this memo saying, dear Catherine, please look at this material. This is Bob Greenblatt, Steven Spielberg. It originally was at Showtime and moved to NBC. And before I could even finish the sentence, I knew that this was a show that they had told me about like from 2 years prior. So I was immediately excited and just hoping that I could get a shot at auditioning. So that's how I first knew about Smash, before it was called Smash, I think. I'll say this, the original script that I read, and I don't know if anybody else knows this, the original script I read had a lot of nudity. Do you remember that?
Oh, more's the pity.
I read that script also.
Showtime, come on.
When it was still at Showtime, I was sent the script when Bob was going over to NBC, and I was told it was the only script he was taking with him. And they said, Steven Spielberg, and it was called the Untitled
Teresa
Project. And it was sexy. It was sexy. I mean, it was definitely a cable show.
Yeah.
And I remember reading it and thinking, this might be the best pilot script I've ever read.
Wow.
And I was like, you know what? For this script, I will move to New York. And then we got the watered down version, and I was like, where's the sex?
Does anyone remember at that table read at the beginning of it? It was hilarious. So we'd all just sat down, and there were a few introductory remarks, and then they put a speaker in the middle of the table. It was like Charlie's Angels.
Yeah.
And then Steven Spielberg emerged from this box. It was like broadcasting live from his private planet. It was really good and quite intimidating, to say the least.
I imagine that when you guys went headfirst into this project, you were a little daunted, if only by the how am I going to learn choreography and the schedule of it? But can you guys talk a little bit about going into a TV project that had this kind of scope to it?
Well, certainly, just on the subject of choreography, it was very difficult to learn the choreography when you're meant to be the choreographer. And a bit like with my singing issues, I did have dancing issues as well. And there was quite early on, they wrote a scene for me and Kat where I was teaching her some steps.
Is that Mambo, Jack?
We shot like one version of me showing how to do some steps. Never again was I ever written a scene where I was doing any choreography. Or I would be behind a desk and I would just scowl and then shout. And that was definitely, that worked better. So that I can certainly remember. That was quite
I know
daunting.
choreographers like that. Like that.
I do remember thinking, like, whenever you're in a show and you have to publicize it, and everyone always goes, this has never been done on TV before because ... and it's never true, right? But in this instance, and to this day, I'm like, the ambition of having one new song a week, which like builds this evolving narrative. And I remember so clearly the first time we saw that a cut together sequence of Let's Be Bad. And I, of course, because I had nothing to do with any of those fully realized sections.
Let's Be Bad.
So it was, and I was like, this is really like one of the most amazing things and ambitious things I've ever seen on television. And it was made it very easy to do all the press for it because it wasn't a sort of hollow claim. Anyway, that I remember very clearly.
One of the, obviously amazing things about the show, these are all, I mean, there were just an original song every episode by this incredible team. And what was that like working with them? Were you big fans going into it?
Well, hearing Mark and Scott's songs every week, like when we get to the table read, I know the girls had have the songs beforehand, but when we get to the table read and after we had them played for the first time, what was coming up in that episode was, for me, the highlight of filming the whole series. I mean, what they put together week by week was just extraordinary.
That to me is...
Jack's reference before about the pride that you feel in your fellow castmates as that comes together, not only with them, but also with what Mark and Scott had written for the cast that week was extraordinary. And I don't know.
They had to write ahead. They had to write, that's all, still to me blows. It's one thing to be a writer in a writer's room and write, break stories and do all that. But then to go, we're going to need this song, and this song. It has to kind of make sense in terms of practical story, and then it has to make sense emotionally for this character to sing. That's they're both great craftsmen, but they also both do it brilliantly and rather well, and that always blew my mind. He told me a story. Yeah, they heard this, they didn't like it. I had to write. I think it was History Is Made at Night or something. Really, just had to go home and write that, and then it blows me away. That blows me away.
I don't think the show would have been as cult classic had it not been for Mark and Scott's music. I really think that they were, they're world-class songwriters as it is, but they really just like nailed it every week. And that's a huge component as to why the show was so successful.
And let's also remind everybody that Let Me Be Your Star is one of the best songs ever.
On the planet. Yeah.
Their music was the heart and the soul of that show, and it's one of the there are many things that I miss, but it's one of the really big things that I miss was getting to be in their studio every week, and watching them like either create, recreate, whatever. Like just being in the studio with them was magic.
And then beyond that,
everything was so beautifully lyrically driven, and everything furthered our plot and the plot of the show that we were doing within the show. It was
smart.
Yes.
Deborah,
the themes like Deborah's theme that would come back when there would be an emotional moment, or each character's theme too. Just the way it was woven in was pretty outstanding and hard to do on television, I think.
They were very clever because they said, don't worry about it. Come into the studio and we'll just practice and we'll do it. And I said, okay. And Christian, you remember, we rehearsed, we learned the song, and they're like, we're just going to use this for rehearsal, for the read through. And I was like, okay, but I'll get another chance, right? And they're like, absolutely. And then they were like, nope, we're using that. I was like, what? So yeah, it was best that I didn't know, but it was thrilling to be in that studio and to be like, I can't believe I'm having this experience. And it definitely felt magical.
Megan, I know you don't think of yourself as a dancer, even though you move beautifully. And I wondered what it was like working with Josh Bergasse and his Emmy-winning choreography, and if you were intimidated.
When I first got the audition for it and I saw that she was a really seasoned ensemble member of 10 years, I was like, oh, this isn't for me. This person's way better than I am. And I am what we call in the biz a singer who moves well. And even that is being really, really generous. Like, I'm surprised I haven't fallen over just sitting here. And I have botched so many dance calls and really, like really terribly, very memorable ones that choreographers still recall to this day. And so when I got the audition, I was like, I can't do this. I can't make a fool out of myself in front of all these people. And when eventually I got it, and they were like, oh, and by the way, you have to come to New York a couple weeks early to learn the baseball number. And this is what you got to do. I was terrified. I was terrified through everything, really, because I was just waiting for somebody to be like, wait, what are you doing here? But luckily, Josh is one of the kindest human beings, and he's so smart in that, like, the picture that you saw on screen was gorgeous, but also what you saw in real life was stunning as well. Like, it was not just catered for the camera. He's an absolute genius, and he knew my limitations. And if you really go back and look at these dance numbers, I'm not doing anything but giving a good face and maybe some arms, and literally everybody else is doing the heavy lifting by just throwing me around. Like, he saw what I was able to do, and he made it work, and that's why he's a genius. And he didn't make me feel bad about it.
It was pretty amazing sitting behind the table and watching these, massive dance numbers, and and I'm looking at Kat, and I'm looking at Hilti, and I'm looking at Wes and Leslie and everyone who is dancing, and I'm like, wait a second, they're shooting 14, 12 hours a day, and then they have to go and rehearse and learn these things. And I thought, shit, I am so glad.
That was something that, like, just blew my mind. Is like, I mean, unlike most of you, and maybe other than like a soap or a commercial, this was like the first TV gig I had. And it was like, we would rehearse from 6 a.m. to noon, and then we would shoot from, like, after the lunch break, 1 to 10 p.m., like absurd hours. I remember crying a lot because I was hired to be the dancer who acted, and I was surrounded by cream of the crop Broadway hoofers who, like, were choreographing on the spot with Bergasse, like, in the room, because he didn't have time to, like, go choreograph these. He had to do it on the spot because he was always on set. So they would be, like, changing choreo constantly, and I'd be like, can you guys just figure out what the steps are and then teach it to me? Because I can't, it was really stressful.
We've all done TV, at least since, and this show is also really rare because since it all took place in that room, really, we were the dancers in the ensemble, we were the, the co-stars sometimes, and then we were also the background actors. So, like, the days were super long because we would, we also just had to be back there fake talking while other scenes were going on.
I learned from Jack Davenport when to exit a scene to save coverage later in the
early and often.
Don't you pick up your bag?
Like Derek would leave
as soon as possible. Right.
Yeah, everybody was really kind and really welcoming, and it was because it was my first series too. It was very kind of a perfect transition, going from years of Broadway and stage stuff into a completely unknown television world, and it was just this perfect sort of like easing into it. Like, oh, there is a comfort zone attached to this sort of new world where I can, like, step back and be a performer, but then also learn all these new things too. It was great.
I have a question for Raza and Brian. Brian, about not really having a singing role as an amazing Broadway singer, and then also Raza singing for the first time in the Bollywood number. How did that feel for you guys?
That was a riot that day, partly because it was one of the first days we'd all been together as a cast, because I know a lot of my stuff was with Kat independently of a lot of the rest of the cast. So that day, everyone was there giving it. Even Jack Davenport doing some Bollywood moves in there somewhere along the line.
It's true. I had a bad back that day.
It happened, but, he strolled backwards in time with the music. But yeah, getting everyone together that day. And also, it was another mark of just how much we accomplished in such a short space of time. I mean, that was a huge number People recording in the studio, you know, learning the tracks, learning all that choreography, and that number of people shot. Did we do it in a day and a half or something? Is that right? It was a day and a half we shot that whole
I think it was in one day.
One day.
Yeah, I think it was one day.
So and you know, and that, you know, that multiplied, that was going on with these girls doing what they did every single, I mean, doing all the dramatic scenes and then having to learn those numbers and do all that as well.
The process of putting up a show, whether it's in summer stock or off Broadway or Broadway, it's pretty intense and pretty laborious, but it's something that is just something that we do. It's something that is natural. So the production aspect of it, I always saw, even though I wasn't really a part of those big numbers. I'm not saying it was easy, but I think it's probably something we all were all so attuned to and used to in some way that it was kind of ignorance is bliss in a way. We didn't, I would imagine that there was just so much work ethic that we all brought to it just by virtue of being in the theater that it just helped get it done. That's something I noticed from on a bigger macro picture. But I do remember shooting the pilot and thinking, well, this is cool. I get to play a guy who doesn't have to sing. And like the fifth or sixth table read, when we get in these episodes and we, you know, everyone would just, you know, stop and do their song, I'd be like, oh my God, I want to sing a song. I want to sing.
How did it feel when they handed you that Guitar Hero guitar?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, that answered all my prayers.
And your stage manager was the voice of reason in much chaos.
Well,
so
true.
I think that people, you know, you resonated with people. Like, these people are nuts. You're let's just take a break.
Just like, what stage manager would put up with that shit?
Yeah.
I'm like, if any of us ever behaved like that in real life, we would be tired.
Will, I wanted to ask you what reaction you got from the show from the theater community and sort of chat about that, because it was meant to represent something behind the scenes and what they would tell you.
The thing I liked about our show is it delved into these people's lives. It didn't just leave it at this little bitchy thing that happened or this little catty thing. And it gets, you know, it gets messy. Mine and Deborah's storyline was messy with Brian's, you know, that stuff that really kind of happens. And I liked messy, and I liked it. Smash was best for me when it was messy. And I think then it celebrated this Broadway thing too, so you had both kind of good components where you had people dancing and being amazing, and then you had the messiness of life. And I think it's my favorite part of it.
I have a question for Christian and Leslie. Could you guys talk about your relationship on the show and if that was fun and how that sort of came to be?
One of the things I talk about most about Smash is what a good kisser Leslie is.
Oh, Leslie.
You know, I came in the 4th episode, so you guys had already made this legendary pilot that still holds up. And, you know, me and Wes joined at the same time. And so to come and join the sandbox with you guys, I was very, very nervous and intimidated, but and Christian was doing such fantastic work. So I just wanted to, you know, I wanted to bring something to the table. You know what I mean? So I thought I would bring the ability to kiss. If I couldn't act,
so much more. I love the scene with you and your family. The dinner that we all had.
That was beautiful.
Yeah.
Jamie, can you tell me about playing the character that audiences, if I may, love to hate?
I don't know. It was a really interesting experience. Even today, like people see me on the street and will just come up to me and tell me they hate me. And
they call you
haven't seen the show.
What? Ellis, are you ever like like Chopped or like Sweet Green and they're like, shove it, Ellis?
Yeah, like legitimately. But I that just kind of says to me that, I don't know, people tend to tell me that means I did a good job. And so I just kind of like try to sit in that. But it was really interesting to have people hate you, but also like, I don't know. It was a really interesting experience.
But do you have to like Ellis, or are you like, this character is a piece of shit and I'm just going to have a good time?
Well, here's the thing. I mean, Ellis's make the world go round, honestly. I mean, I've met people like Ellis. I have worked with people like Ellis. I have incorporated parts of that personality into myself in certain situations to get what I want. I think we all have to, in this industry and in this business, like climb a ladder in a way in order to get, you know, what it is that we desire. So I think there's a little bit of Ellis in everybody.
I have a question for Deborah and Christian about your characters and whether you did any research on composer lyricist partners, or if you based any of your characters on other people, or sort of how you went about creating that relationship.
Christian.
Well, I'm a very outside-in actor. I don't know if you guys have So my research consisted of watching Mark Shaman, how he sits at the piano. So I just kind of like decided to do a little one leg tucked under while I played the piano.
And you took piano lessons.
I did take some piano lessons, and I think I faked it okay. But what you can't fake is chemistry. And I remember when I went into the final audition and sat in that room with Deborah, and I had like my 2 different looks on hangers. I was so nervous, and we just clicked instantly. And I felt so at ease, and I said, is there anything that you need for the, and she was like, this is your audition, what do you need? And it just started from there, and it was just the happiest accident, and carried us through 2 wonderful seasons.
Yeah, it was love at first sight with us. Shout out to Scott Whitman, our incredible lyricist. When I was cast, I went over to his apartment, and he showed me his process. He had these huge papers and all these books, and he actually showed me this huge piece of paper with all of these random lines and phrases, and at the top it said Julia's song, and he gave it to me, and I have it framed above my piano.
Wow. Kat, I wanted to ask you about the Team Ivy, Team Karen of it all, and whether it was challenging pretending that you hate lovely Megan, who is irresistible, as we all know.
We were very method.
It's virtually impossible to hate Megan or dislike Megan. So again, like what Christian was saying, you can't fake chemistry, and that was one of the things that Megan, I mean, I think that we all had, but that Megan and I particularly had such great chemistry, and we genuinely liked each other. And I remember when we were recording Let Me Be Your Star, I turned to her and I said, it's like we're living a dream, isn't it? And we just both knew we had landed on something that was so special, and that I think collectively we were living out every dream we could possibly have wanted. So it wasn't being bitchy to each other wasn't actually the easiest part of our jobs. It was actually quite difficult to make that seem realistic, and I haven't gone back and watched it in a while, but I'm sure it wasn't quite as believable as I could have maybe tried.
And then, as you mentioned, Kat, being a cult classic, I know that that's sort of, I'm the creator of a cult show. It's sort of a double-edged sword, but the people who love it. And I imagine that just must be really incredible to have interactions with people that are just in love with the show. And are you guys surprised at its longevity? Is there anything else you want to say to the obsessive Smash fans now that we have an opportunity?
I mean, I'm definitely surprised by how the show has lived on for so many years after. But as you guys know from my Twitter and my Instagram, I'm more than happy to keep it going until the show comes back. And I think we need to give the people what they want. Wink to all those producers who are watching right now.
That's right.
You know, one of the creators and producers ran one of these newfangled streaming services.
While it was happening, especially towards the end, there was this whole movement of kind of hate watching, which was really, really difficult to go through. And especially when we were still filming the end of the second season, kind of knowing that it was, but now, you know, even right after and since then, it's suddenly vanished, and it was like it never happened. And it was just like, what was happening there? And clearly we did capture something, and unfortunately that negativity kind of drowned out all the positive stuff that we generated with the show.
Smash is one of the things I'm most proud of. you know, the fact that we were able to bring Broadway to middle America, to people who will never have the money to be able to travel to New York and to actually sit in the theater. And, you know, it just, I was so grateful that we were doing it and to be a part of it. And our cast was so exquisite. And yeah, and I'm constantly asked, you know, especially I was on a reboot. So they're like, okay, what about and I was like, if it's in New York, I'm in.
I have a question about the concert. So Christian, you had won a Tony the night before it. You just barrel into this.
Another one.
Rolling in like, which one?
No, it was one of the most happy, surreal moments of my life. I mean, it was everything coming together at once, and it was a beautiful, very difficult, long day.
My favorite concert story is backstage. Leslie had either been offered or shot a pilot. And this is in between Hamilton, downtown, and Hamilton. And he and I are alone in this dressing room. And I'm all about TV at this point. I'm like, I got kids, I got to make money. And Leslie and I had this conversation. Segueing right into this, I told him, I said, dude, you don't forget the show. Do a television show. Forget a Broadway play. He goes, no, I'm really holding out. And this is, 6 months off, no money. I'm like, Leslie, come on. This is going to be the biggest mistake of your life. Got to East Square on Hollywood Squares.
Kat, did the concert experience make you want to do a Broadway show?
Yes, it definitely did. And I ended up doing my first Broadway show like 3 years later. I always felt like I wanted to be a part of the theater community, Broadway community. I never thought it would be through a television series that would be my introduction in a way. But yeah, that live concert was a thrill, and it was also terrifying because it was fast and furious, and it felt like a true opening night.
The thing I remember about that concert was the response. It really was, in my experience, the closest I've ever come to being like in a
yeah.
I mean, it was
really wild.
Extraordinarily exciting night for the people that wanted to come and support it, because I can't remember how long we hadn't been on the air. Were we not on the air at the time? I can't remember.
No, it was years later.
We've been off for years.
So
Yeah.
the demand was pent up, and there were so many avid fans, and like what Megan was saying, it's just people still talk about the show and love it. But that night was a physical, you could really feel it. It was really an extraordinary concert for that reason.
Right, and the mayhem for people to try and get tickets to go to this. You really got the sense like, wow, this show was so much bigger than we ever knew.
Yeah. I mean, it sold out in like 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Like
well, my husband came, I saw him after the show, and he was like, I have to be honest, we almost didn't come because there were people offering to buy tickets off of us for $6,000 a piece. And I was like, what?
Oh my God.
What are you doing?
Megan, are you sure they weren't just trying to borrow money from you?
This was from my husband, because they were in line to come into the theater and people were offering them $6,000 per ticket.
Oh my God.
Wow.
Men to take their tickets and take their place.
By the way, I'm being told that it was 15 minutes that it sold out. I have producers in my earpiece right now. And then finally, I have one last question, which is, when you were doing the show, or even now, was there something that you wanted to do that you didn't get to do, that you'd sort of hoped, I hope my character gets to do this?
Live to the end of the season, really, is all it was just to do all the episodes I was contracted to do. But
indeed.
That's a great answer.
Marrying Karen
answer.
as well.
I was hoping to get like conked on the head at one point and just go into some fantasy sequence. It was my maybe like making a salad one night in the kitchen, and then an appliance falls on my head, and then I go to a big number. That didn't happen.
Megan, any final words of love to the fans or comments about the longevity of the show?
I make it no secret that Smash is one of the greatest loves of my life. It is one of the greatest things that ever happened to me. And not just because I got to be on TV and I got to sing on TV and I got to play a really interesting character on TV and all of those like superficial things. It brought some of the most beautiful people into my life. So many people on camera and off camera that that I miss terribly. And I look back on those years so fondly, even though it was really hard. I loved every second of it. And I would give anything to get it back, just like all of these amazing Smash fans. I am right there with you. So the second anything moves forward, I'm right there with you.
Okay, cast of Smash, we could talk all day, but it's time to get back to the Bombshell concert. Get ready for Act 2. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Thanks for watching. And don't forget to donate to the Actors Fund. See you soon.